Well, it's that time of the week again, guys. I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Commander Cockings. Welcome back, guys.
Well, Samuel, are you ready to learn some new things today?
Always up for that, indeed. And today, with joining us, the designer of today's ship, Mr. Adam Ihle, everyone. Welcome to the show, Adam. Glad you could join us.
Hi. How's it going?
Yeah.
Good. Welcome back. So this ship design process that Adam will be talking to us today about is the Enterprise F, as seen in Star Trek Online. It should be noted that the final ship that we see in-game, though, is slightly different from the basic design that Adam submitted. But as we do here on Trekyards, we will be discussing that final version with the 3D modelers over at Star Trek Online in another episode, detailing the actual in-game ship and all the changes that they had to make.
But today's discussion with Adam will be all about those early sketches and the process that he went through, making his vision stand out from the crowd of submitted entries and win his appearance inside canon, so to speak. So without further ado, let's dive in. Ready, guys?
Swan dive. What kind of dive you want? Swan dive.
Jackknife.
Dive.
Okay.
Belly flop. Let's belly flop right into this. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, belly flop. That's how we do things here at Trekyards.
So first off, Adam, can you tell us and the viewers how you came to design this ship of the line and the latest ship to bear the distinguished name of Enterprise? Are you a designer by trade or just as a hobby?
I am a professional artist, not a I've got a degree in industrial design, but when I actually entered the contest, I was working as a sculptor and doing stuff in Orlando for the theme parks. And it was, so yes, I am technically a designer. I've got the degree. I can hold it up and say, yes, I have a degree in design. But it was not what I was doing. I had steered away from that stuff and gone more towards getting my hands dirty all the time. And so it was something I love to do. I still sculpt. And I'm actually working on some pieces right now for some people. So, but when it's like, yes, I was a professional designer, which did cause problems when people found out that I was a professional designer, because when I won the contest, believe me, when I won the contest, there was some serious uproar. There was a especially within the Star Trek Online stuff, because I wasn't the fan favorite to win. There was another ship that I think is Sean Wexelman.
Well, Adam, obviously, we know all about this contest, but in your own words, what was the background of that contest?
Oh, I was on the Trek BBS, and someone had posted it and said, "Hey, they're running a contest for the Enterprise." I was like, "Well, that sounds kind of fun." So I was like, "You know what? Sure, I'll throw my hand in the ring." And I did up a bunch of sketches, and it was just stuff I did on my off time, and I submitted something because it was coming close to the deadline. I almost forgot about it. I almost missed it, and I was like, you know what? Let me run with this, and I whipped up a black and white concept and sent it out. And I forgot about it, honestly. I completely forgot. I had no idea. I got the email that morning, and I was like, huh, what do you know? And I thought it was a trick. I thought somebody was pulling my leg, and I was like, are you kidding me? So I went online, and sure enough, I had won.
Wow.
And it was like awesome and completely horrible at the same time. So
now, looking at some of the early sketches you did for the ship, there's actually an image that I stumbled across for her that has her listed as the Cetea class.
Yes, and that was a reference to the initial, literally, I think the first two comments I saw after I won, someone had said it was a fat bloated whale.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, okay. So now it's the Cetea class. Thanks. So I could have called it the cetacean class, but it became the Cetea class because Cetea in Greek is a sea monster, and it sounds mean and nasty, so that's where I went.
Mm-hmm. And we know in game, though, it's been changed, the designation, to the Odyssey class. So was it you that picked the first name, and were you consulted regarding changing the name?
Oh, no. When the contest was run, in the rules it said that when you submit this, it becomes their property, and everything I have done after or before that, or most of the stuff you see I gave you guys was beforehand, and the stuff that you have seen that of the sketches. There were a few, like the Cetea class drawing was done afterwards, after the win, because people wanted to know what my ideas were, and So I kept going with it a little bit, but my part was done according to the rules and the way it was legally set up. They took my design and then they ran with it. So my input was very minimal. I guess I can say it now. I did have a little bit of contact back and forth with some of the designers, but nothing where my input was used. It was more of a, hey, this is where we're going with it, that kind of thing, and congratulations and all that. But my input ended after the win, and they took the concept. So up until that point, up until the final concept, and I think a couple other drawings, I kind of walked away from the Enterprise. I think the last drawing I did was 4 years ago. And it was still because it's already out there. It's people know what the Odyssey class is. And the Cetei class was just more of a tongue-in-cheek joke. I really didn't have an idea as to where it was going to go and what it was going to be named. And a lot of people were like, do you get to do it? And he's like, nope, it's out of my hands. And I understood that from the get-go. And a lot of people, I was never upset. And a lot of people on the Trek BBS and a few other places were like, oh, you should be in. I was like, no, read the rules. It says no. It's like, we take it and we do it. I was like, I'm good. It's like my stamp in Star Trek history is there. I'm done.
Are you happy with the name Odyssey class? It's an
Actually,
epic
yes,
name
I
for a
am.
class.
It is. It is, and it was surprising. I was like, Odyssey. I thought they would have went with Discovery class or something. I don't know. Just because Enterprise, Discovery, and it's one of those. But when they went Odyssey, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And that was. It was like I got the news just as everybody else did. I might have gotten a little bit beforehand, but I got the same news everybody did. So when the Odyssey was released, the name was released, the Odyssey class, I was right there with everybody else going, oh, kind of cool.
So was this a ship design you'd had in mind for a while? I know a lot of us have ideas that we throw around, we watch shows and think Trek and see new designs all the time. So tell us, were there some pre-existing design elements that you had in your brain that you then considered and wanted to put into a design? This was your outlet? Or was it all brand new?
It was brand new, being a Star Trek fan for basically my whole life. My mother's a Trekkie and she got me doing it. And no, but my ideas and my fandom went into the ships and the designs and how the show was made, which is why I went to do what I did. I became a designer and all that. I wanted to be the guy that made the monsters and the spaceships and all that, not the guy in front of the camera. I wanted to be the guy behind it. And so I knew Gene had set up a Bible, and he goes, there was a look. I remember Gene Roddenberry said it. The Enterprise, when it's on screen, you have to know it's the Enterprise. He goes, there could be 1,000 other ships on screen, but you have to be able to say that's the Enterprise. And there's a look, there's a lineage that has to, you have to know what it looks like. So that was my first jumping point. I was like, okay, it has to look like the Enterprise. So if you saw it in silhouette or if you saw it somewhere else, it has to fit. And you go, oh, that's the Enterprise. And that was where I jumped off from. And then it was like I wanted to do something different. What was different? And that's, the sketches start from the get-go. It was different from the get-go. There were the two necks really early on.
Well, that's actually the next question, so that's perfect. So in looking at the sketches and even the final design, it's very clear that one of the most unique aspects of your vision was the specially designed neck or connecting dorsal element. Now you have two attachment points with a space in the middle. So what made you want to go with something like that?
Initially, my ideas, I was looking and getting ideas around the board, looking at the Enterprise and other ships. And I started going outside of Trek. And the USS Protectorate, or the USEA Protectorate, was one that hit me. And I was like, what if that turned around? What if you swung that sucker around? Because the Protectorate from Galaxy Quest has a dish-type nacelle structure. And I was like, what if you spun that around and you put two necks out off of that and had the nacelle or the struts holding the saucer instead of that? And as I started going through it, I was like, and I kind of like the negative space. It's like the Romulan Warbird, which was a big part of that one. I was like, what if we widened it out a little bit? And I was trying to figure out how to make it the Enterprise without making it too fat, too wide. And even in my initial sketch, it's still not where I wanted it. It was a concept. I really had very little time to get that in before the deadline, and I finished it and sent it out. I would have tightened the necks up in my original, some of my original sketches, had the necks closer together where they were underneath, which is kind of how Cryptic went with it. They didn't spread the necks out; they brought them in tighter. So it was like they kind of read my mind here and there, but they did a good job with it. And but the two necks were almost always there. They were there from the get-go, even if it wasn't completely split through. The idea of a cavity there, some kind of negative space, was always was from the get-go.
Was there a functional reason? I mean, obviously form follows function. What do you see the functional aspect to having such a unique...
I just wanted to go back to the necks, actually. There wasn't a functionality. When the ships had all, in my opinion, how did I say it? They all started to go spoon-like. There was no... They all kind of looked like a spoon. If you held a spoon up, it's like... It started with the Enterprise D. If you look at the silhouette of the Enterprise D, it looks like a tablespoon from the side. A bent hardcore, and then as they further the Voyager and the Enterprise E, no offense, John, don't kill me, it kind of looks like a spoon. And I was like, what if we went back to old school? What if we gave it the neck again? What if we gave it that connection? And then I was like, well, that single connection everybody always says is too weak. What if it had two that held it up? And it went from there. And then I was like, oh, look at the Protectorate, and it all kind of started over a couple of weeks. Coming out as, okay, let me try this, let me try that.
And looking at the sort of famous ink sketch you have with the 5 Enterprises below it, you can see how thin those necks are. We talked to Doug and other people about design, and a lot of the time, this is so far in the future that the whole materials to build this exist, otherwise they couldn't exist. So having such a thin piece actually says more about advancement, and to me this looks very, very thin, but obviously if that's all that's needed to keep it together, that's a hell of an advanced ship, to make that completely working.
Like I had said originally, but like when I sent that out there, I mean, I looked back at it, I was like, oh, I can't believe I put that there, and I drew it the way I did, so the necks actually came out like this. And they formed the V. I would have brought them in tighter into the center of the hull, so they weren't so sharp out to the sides where they could have been a little thicker. But I mean, it is what it is, and it obviously struck a chord because here we are.
And did you envision it to saucer separate? Was that
yes, saucer separation was always there from the get-go. I had some help with that later on because people asked me, it was like, saucer separation. And I had thought about it, and I was like, the necks would go with it. That was my original idea. The necks would always go with the saucer. And I never gave you guys. I'll make sure that I never gave you guys. I'll put it up on my Facebook page. I do have a shot of the image where I drew it separating, and the necks at that point had wrapped around the hull, so it would collapse down slightly and then pull out or go forward, and there would be a warp ring within the necks that would open up. So now your saucer and your secondary hull were both warp powered, and there were 2 warp cores, and there you go, 2 engine rooms and all that, and it would have all worked that way. And everybody was, I mean, that I had help on because I knew there would be some kind of nacelle structure or something warp wise in there, but the actual ring came from someone else. They said, you know what if you connected the 2 underneath? And I was like, that's a good idea. And it helped out because all of a sudden now there was a warp ring that you could use.
That's what I call design. That's why you're a designer.
Yeah.
So the task was to create an Enterprise flagship to be launched 36 years after the Enterprise E was launched. This leap is longer than that of the D and of the E, in which time we saw rather substantial evolution in technology. So moving 36 years into the future, how did you approach designing the ship from a future of the future? And how in your mind is she pushing the limits of technology and design?
Thinner. I mean, she was thinner in places where she wouldn't be. She was thicker in places in other places. Like the body of the hull, that would be, she was more substantial there. Nacelle struts and all that were thinner, going more towards the G. Everything was heading toward the J. Heading more towards the J. So, and I had heard Doug talk about it, and I've talked to him since winning, that the nacelle struts on those are exactly what they're supposed to be. They are thin for a reason. It's because it is the future, and technology then is different as it is now. A lot of people, they're too thin, they'll get shot with a photon and all that.
It's a very large photon then, if that, because they're very, very thick nacelles considering.
Yeah, it's the future. So I was My idea was get back to the lineage and start pushing it towards the J, because there's a pretty big jump from the E to the J.
5 iterations. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's still design wise. If you look at the J has more in common with the D than it does the E, and because of the way that it's just structured in the saucer size, saucer shapes, and all that. So I was like, let's head back that way. So.
Now, you mentioned Gene's rules for making the Enterprise recognizable, so it's also worth asking the question, what makes a good Enterprise, and what did you do to keep the design recognizable as the Enterprise?
Keep it as close to the original as possible. That's why the E works, because there is no denying what that ship is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has to, like I said, the silhouette. I started with the silhouettes. And if it looks good in the silhouette, then you start working it the other way.
So, what are some of your main design inspirations? What ships from Star Trek are your favourite? And did you incorporate any of those elements into this design, or was it very much its own thing?
The refit Enterprise is my favorite, and followed closely by probably it's a toss-up between the Excelsior and the E. Probably closer to the E. The D, looking at it 25 years later, kind of I'm like, there's certain elements back then and when it first came out, I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. And it's like now looking at it, it's odd. There's an oddness to it that kind of makes me go.
It's the future.
It's the future, yes. And I mean, it's definitely got. It's definitely an Enterprise. You know what it is, but. It's different, and the E starts going back towards the look that had been established by Matt Jeffries, and
I often say the E is a spiritual successor of the Excelsior. It's very similar designs.
Yes.
Now, did you do all your sketches on paper, or much like Rick Sternbach, did you doodle on napkins and whenever it was lying around at the time? It's always fun to hear about inspiration striking at the weirdest of times, and there always isn't a sheet of paper nearby.
And what was your actual process in refining the design as well, from paper to maybe after paper?
Let's see. Yes and yes. There were times where I would... there was times at work where I would grab a piece of foam, because we carved out of foam, and I would sit there and shape something out of foam, and I'm looking at it going, okay, that'll work, and I'll set that aside, and I took it home with me, and I would sketch from that. It helps being a sculptor. I was like, okay, yeah, let me try that, try that. That'll work. And some of it didn't work that way, but yeah, napkins. It was I'm at work, and I was like, you know what, let me try and doodle that down. Now, it helped that I work in an artistic area, so we had a lot of pencils and paper laying around, so I could doodle. But there was definitely a lot of spur of the moment. Something just hits me, and I could sit there and be driving down the road and see something and go, oh, that's kind of cool. As I'm driving by it and be like, oh, I'm putting that in there. Let me try that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And was there a process? How long was a process in refining the sketches to to the thing you submitted?
I think it was 2.5, 3 weeks that I actually, when you add it all up, because there was a lot of gaps in between, because I think there was 3 months from its initial announcement to the deadline originally, something in that. But I didn't work on it all the time. It was when I could and I had free time, and so yeah, about 2.5 weeks complete from initially start doodling something down to the final rendering that I sent to them.
Another important element of many designs is the actual scale or size of the ship. Did you go in knowing how much bigger to the Enterprise E you wanted it? We know the only other future Enterprise we've seen is the Enterprise J, as we mentioned, designed by Doug Drexler, and we actually asked this question in the script, which you already answered. Did you use that design to tie in elements, or was that a bit far in the future? But like I say, how big did you envision it compared to the E? Was that very much what you wanted? Was that what Stowe wanted later on? How's that scale-wise for you?
Scale-wise, Stowe and I were basically on the same page. I knew that it would be about 200-300 meters longer. I think it's about 200 meters or 100 meters longer than the E. I don't know. I don't remember their exact scale on it. But it would be definitely hundreds of meters bigger than the E, it would start to go towards the J, because the J is what, a mile or so
2
long. I mean,
miles.
it's
2
2 miles
miles,
long. It's huge. So I wanted to start pushing it that way.
Yeah, we did. I don't know if you watched. We did an episode on the evolution of the Enterprise. We included your F because it's a very interesting step, and it's obviously not canon, but it's licensed. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yes.
And seeing it next to all the other ships, the evolution of size is completely realistic. I mean, it's a natural. I mean, I talked to Thomas Moreau about exactly how big it is. So yeah, it was very natural. But you wanted that just not ginormous leap, but enough to make a statement, as it were.
A push. It was like its big brother. Somebody was like, oh, okay.
That's a good way
Or
to
little
describe
brother
it.
that got it's a little brother that got bigger. It's like, oh, where'd you get those genes?
That's it, guys. Tune in for the next part, which is next week.
Next week? So I have to wait a whole week for next part? Oh.
You do indeed.
But
we'll see you then.
Bye. See you. Bye.